Here's something we figured out years ago. All of the wellbeing programs that organisations offer, so the STEP challenges, the EAP, mental health first aid, meditation apps, they're not doing nothing, but they're not moving the needle. And we wanted to figure out why, and we really wanted to understand what was going on. And one of the things that we noticed was some companies could have exactly the same program. So you could have two companies, same offering. One company has the offering fairly well received, feel like they're getting a bit out of it, pretty high engagement. Another company has the offering where poorly received, poorly utilized, not doing anything. And when we dug under the covers, we kind of came up with a bit of an analogy that explained what was going on, and we looked at it as like a cake. So it was like having a terrible cake with nice icing is still a terrible cake. The icing doesn't actually disguise the fact that it's a terrible cake. A really nice cake with nice icing is complemented by the icing. So if we think about the workplace as a cake in that analogy, if you've got a workplace that is, strong culture, high morale, great engagement, the icing is those wellbeing programs. They're going to be a lot better received. They're going to be that sort of expectation that I expect my employer to care about my well-being and have some offerings. I'm going to look at them. I'm going to utilize them. Okay. As opposed to the organization that has the, poor culture, low morale, low engagement. And when we look at why that's happening, it tends to happen based on what's happening in the system, what's happening in the interactions with the people in the system. It's the way that I experience work. So if I think about that analogy, that's the cake. I've got to get that right. We actually mapped that out and we found a hierarchy, and the order that you apply it really matters. So we think about it in 3 stages, and we start with the system design. So we're going to look at how is the work structured. So before you spend $1 on wellbeing programs, you want to know things like, are workloads reasonable? Are roles clear? Are people given control over the way that they do their work? Is change communicated effectively? And so on and so on. And we look at the system and we actually map out all of those different workflows and all of the way that people experience work. And we document that into a system, and we look at how risks might be showing up and what we can do to mitigate them. And so that means documenting your system. It means really looking at your policies, your procedures, your job descriptions, your rosters, your KPIs, all of those areas that are data within your business. And there's going to be others. So there's going to be calendars and meeting cultures and software that's measuring KPIs and so on and so on. You'll have it. It's hidden sometimes, and sometimes it's quite obvious. What you want to do then is look at that documentation and, analyze it. Is it consistent? When was it last updated? What are we saying we're doing? What does our policy say? When a manager has to follow a set of steps and procedures to do a performance review, what do our steps and our procedures say has to happen? And does that actually now apply, and are we compliant with what the law says we should be doing? Do we see any risks showing up there? The next level is leadership capability. So we want to see how interactions happen. We want to understand, do leaders behave consistently? Do they create cultures of psychological safety? Are they able to balance that with accountability? Are they building trust? Can they show empathy? Are they good listeners? Are they curious? Are they able to, utilize a growth mindset? There's a whole bunch of things that we want to be looking at, because the more that leaders can be doing those things, the more that we can understand where we're creating rewards with our interactions as opposed to risk, and where risk and threats are created, we want to actually mitigate those. So that means we're going to be doing things like 360 assessments on leadership behaviors. We want to look at pattern analysis from exit interviews. We want to look at team engagement scores by manager, direct observations, feedback, right? Again, a lot of this data lives in our systems, and we could even be looking at, email sentiment, meeting transcripts. There's a lot of data that can be analyzed, and it can tell us and paint us a picture. What we're looking for is those risks that we can see from the interactions that people have, knowing that the data says the interactions that you have with your direct manager affects your health more than the interactions that you have with partners, with friends, with your GP. Like, it's a really important dynamic there, and leaders need to understand, and we need to be providing our leaders with the relevant support and capability coaching so that they can actually close those gaps. Then we finally get to level 3. This is where we now can look at our individual support. So we're looking at our icing now. And it's only now that our wellbeing programs make sense. And here's the shift. Instead of buying generic programs off the shelf and mapping them out to wellbeing pillars, we want to look at level 1 and level 2 and ask, what hazards exist that we can't fully eliminate? What support do people need for those specific risks, right? So let me give you an example. We might see a customer contact center that's a 24-hour operation. Might be a healthcare business that's 24/7. We've got a lot of those kind of businesses. Shift work's unavoidable, right? We know shift work disrupts sleep patterns. There's a psychosocial hazard that we can't fully eliminate. So what we want to do is design support specifically for that. So we want to look at some sort of sleep program that's going to help. Now, when we do that, we want to build a business case. When we build a business case, by that we mean think about it like a business would. What problem are you solving? So in this case, it's sleep disruption from shift work. Who's it for? So it's for rotating shift workers. What change do we seek to make? So we want to see better quality sleep, reduce fatigue. How will we measure success? What does that look like? Maybe there's sleep quality scores, sick day patterns. We get direct feedback, okay? That's very different from saying, I've got a physical health pillar and I match subsidized gym membership to that pillar. I don't really know why, I just know I've got it, okay? Nothing wrong with subsidized gym membership, but let's think about what it's for. Let's think about who it's for. Let's think about the change that we seek to make. When we actually get under the covers, perhaps we find that the subsidized gym membership is more appropriate to support people on a financial well-being basis. So we really want to look at that. Now, finally, I just want to get to, you can do all of this manually. You can map every policy, run every assessment, build spreadsheets that track all of the data. It works. We did it for years as consultants. The challenge is it takes hundreds of hours. And at the moment, with the constant change that's going on in basically every workplace that exists, where we're seeing restructures, constant new policies, lots of change, lots of people coming, going, your entire architecture is out of date as soon as you've kind of created it, which means keeping up with that is really, really difficult. So on top of it being a very labor-intensive job, it's very almost impossible to have it up to date all the time. We've actually found that automation changes the game entirely, and obviously applying AI to this is game changing. So when you can upload your policies, your procedures, that entire systematic risk architecture, and you can enrich that with assessments that you've conducted with your employees, and that AI is trained on the various laws that exist, that's when you can really move the needle from being quite reactive to not only proactive, but actually predictive. You can actually start to model change that's coming and look at the potential hazards that are going to show up before you've even implemented the change. We've built this software. We are offering a free audit to show you where you sit, to give you a readiness score and show you where your gaps are. So if you're interested, we'll put a link in the comments on how you can access that. Just simply type audit and we'll sort you out with a free login. Whatever approach you take, manual or automated, start with the hierarchy. So system first, leadership second, individual support comes at the end. So again, we don't start with that icing. We want to build the decent cake. That's when wellbeing programs actually work.